It's the 1930s. Breadlines, dust storms, and despair are trending. Yet, in America's poorest corners, light appears. Actual light, as though families flip a switch and summon fire from the gods. Outside, machines roar to life, ending the kind of back-breaking labor that's been wrecking spines since humans could walk upright. It's like living in the future. The secret? Something that sounds less like a miracle and more like paperwork. The Tennessee Valley Authority. So, what exactly was it? The Industrial Revolution and the United States. It was a match made in capitalist heaven, love at first sight. By 1890, America had transformed into the world's biggest economic powerhouse. It was fueled by oil, steel, and sheer audacity. Sure, a few people got rich, like really rich. The rest, mostly soot and 14-hour shifts. But like every blossoming romance, there was a third wheel, rural America. The Industrial Revolution didn't sweep across every corner of the country equally. It took one look at the countryside and said, maybe later. And no place felt that more than the Tennessee Valley. And this is it. It covers the drainage basin of the Tennessee River, snaking from Kentucky through Tennessee, Alabama, Georgia, the Carolinas, and into Virginia. Sounds idyllic, right? Rivers, rolling hills, all that water? You'd think paradise. You'd be wrong. In Union County, Tennessee, only 1% of farm owners had indoor plumbing. Across the whole valley, just 3 out of every 100 people had electricity. Everyone else was side-eyeing electricity like it was the 1930s version of crypto. Think tech detox, but with less sanitation. In an industrialized America, the Tennessee Valley was left behind. Proof that the nation's marriage was slightly toxic. The North had industrialized early. The South still waiting for the honeymoon phase to start. The South's economy was circling the drain long before the stock market crash. And it wasn't just cotton prices falling. It felt like God himself had packed up, moved north, and left a good luck note on the fridge. In Enterprise, Alabama, there's a monument, not to a hero or a battle, but to an insect, the boll weevil. The bug crossed over from Mexico in the 1890s and tore through southern cotton fields, destroying livelihoods. Imagine being so collectively traumatized, you build a statue for your nemesis. But even here, geography had left one last gift. The blessing showed up in Muscle Shoals, Alabama. That's where the Tennessee River drops 140 feet in just 30 miles. All that falling water meant enormous untapped energy. A natural hydro jackpot just sitting there, waiting for someone to notice. I know the feeling. If you like these videos, make sure to hit that subscribe button, because apparently the only direction my life goes is zoom in. Anyway. By 1916, the federal government paid attention. It bought the site, built Wilson Dam, and planned to power a nitrate plant for World War I explosives. Very patriotic. Slight problem? The war ended early. A 1921 General Electric map just rubbed salt in the wound. States were blown up or shrunk based on how many people had electricity. Washington, D.C. looked like it had eaten the map. 98% electrified and feeling pretty smug. The national average? 57%. Out of 108 million Americans, 62 million had light. The rest were basically living in a sepia-tone Instagram filter. The Civil War was long over, but the Mason-Dixon line still doing its job. Almost a century later, the United States looked uncomfortably like it had in 1830, just with better hats and worse stock markets. Southern income hovered around 60% of the national average. It was the Great Depression's version of "we're doing fine." The Wilson Dam opened in 1925, costing $47 million, about $663 million today. That's a bargain. That's the same price as a family-sized carton of eggs in 2025. Congress panicked. It was a lot of money, so they tried to sell it off. Enter the parade of buyers. Henry Ford threw down an offer for a 99-year lease to build a nitrate plant. It was the region's first glimpse of what industry could look like. But none of the southern states fought to keep it. Not one. The push came from a senator from Nebraska. The only guy who cared about the local economy lived 800 miles away. Senator George W. Norris tried 6 times to get federal backing for development in the Tennessee Valley. 6. At that point, he wasn't pitching policy. He had a rejection kink. In the roaring 20s, he was the right man at the absolute wrong party. Washington was too busy swimming in champagne to care about people swimming in floodwater. Then there was a drought from 1925 to 1928. Crops died. Livestock starved. By 1929, poor white Georgians were surviving on about $200 a year, roughly $3,800 today. And that was before the Depression. When the crash came, it shattered what little foundation it had. Cotton plunged to 5.66 cents a pound in 1931, the lowest in decades. The entire Southern economy had face-planted into the dirt it was trying to farm. America had always been complicated, one side industrial and ambitious, the other still fumbling in the dark trying to find the light switch. The Industrial Revolution just made the differences impossible to ignore. But divorce wasn't on the table. They had to make it work, like a couple staying together for the kids. It didn't have to be this way. Germany, bombed, broke, and still emotionally processing World War I, had 90% of its farms electrified. New Zealand hit 60%, and adding insult to injury, Canada was ahead too. In the 1930s, 20% of rural Ontario already had power. The question was how, and how to do it in the middle of the Great Depression. That era was misery on a scale that's hard to imagine. The 2008 crash looked like a bad Monday by comparison. In 1933, unemployment hit almost 25%. There was no TikTok or Instagram to fall back on. You couldn't just reinvent yourself as a Depression core influencer. You were too busy starving. And the pain wasn't spread evenly either. That 25% was just the national average. Some regions were doing fine, others looked like the economy had rage quit life. The North got hit hard. Michigan peaked at 35.9% unemployment. New York and Pennsylvania weren't far behind. Brutal, but survivable. Head south, though, and things got grim. Georgia and South Carolina managed around 19%. That was the good news. The South was already poor before the Depression. For Black Southerners, it was even worse. Of course it was. Nationally, half of African Americans were unemployed. In the Jim Crow South, it wasn't a downturn. It was biblical. In Atlanta, 70% of black workers lost their jobs as the menial labor white folks once turned their noses up at suddenly looked like a promotion. And guess who got those jobs first? Yeah, it's not hard to figure out. For the first few years, it looked hopeless. The Depression kept sinking. Many Southerners, especially in the Tennessee Valley, would have considered a Hooverville an upgrade, and plenty moved north to test the theory. Conditions there were somehow even worse than the rest of the South. Floods hit every year, submerging 11,000 square miles. Topsoil washed away, crops vanished. 7 million acres of farmland were ruined. Fires took 10% of forests annually. It was like the Earth really had a grudge against the South. Back in Union County, per capita income was just 44% of the national average. 30% had malaria. If the Depression was a body blow to the South, the Tennessee Valley took a clean shot to the chin. Then, in 1933, Franklin D. Roosevelt arrived. He rolled in like a political exorcist. Less than 2 months after taking office, FDR signed the Tennessee Valley Authority Act, and it came with big promises. Restore farmland and industry. Generally convince Americans the government could, in fact, do something other than ruin Tuesdays. The TVA was bold and ambitious, and it made enemies fast. Private power companies saw a federal utility as pure heresy. To them, electricity wasn't progress, it was profit. The idea of government-run power made them furious, like someone had opened a free buffet right next to their 5-star restaurant. So, in the time-honored American tradition, they sued. It's practically a reflex at this point. And it didn't look good for the TVA. The courts ruled against it early on, but it clawed back a win on appeal. Still, this was America. There's always another lawsuit. What came next was something not usually associated with the government: speed. Normally, people expect studies, hearings, a 5-year plan to make a 1-year decision. The TVA didn't have that luxury. Whatever good it could do, it had to do fast, before the next flood or court date. It started by taking over Wilson Dam. It became the TVA's first headquarters. It was a flex. a way to show what it could do. Muscle Shoals became the first area to get power from Wilson Dam. More than 100 nearby towns followed. Electricity didn't just light homes, it rewired lives. After years of sweat, sunburn, and guesswork farming, people could finally flip a switch and join the 20th century. You know, the one everyone else had been in for a while. Civilization 2.0, now with fewer torches. The first project, a shiny new dam on the Clinch River. Named after Senator Norris, construction started in October of 1933. Suddenly, there was work again. Real, honest, pay-your-bills work. Within a year, 9,000 people were on TVA payrolls. And unlike most Depression jobs, these workers were organized. FDR was union-friendly, and the TVA followed suit. But the TVA wasn't all hero shots and hydro glory. The locals weren't thrilled. Imagine the government showing up to flood your farm and move your house. Hard to feel grateful when your front porch suddenly qualifies as waterfront property. But there were no equal employment opportunities in the 1930s. None. And while many African Americans had shifted from the party of Lincoln to vote for FDR, he was no civil rights hero. To pass his New Deal, he needed Southern Democrats, which meant compromises. Big ones. Black workers rarely got a chance. When they did, it was usually with a broom or a shovel, never a blueprint. Women on construction sites? Yeah, that wasn't happening. The Depression had changed plenty, but gender roles weren't one of them. A woman in a hard hat might as well have been science fiction or witchcraft. And Native American concerns, barely a blip. The TVA's reservoirs swallowed burial grounds. To its credit, the government did rebury the remains with new tombstones. A nice gesture, considering accidentally creating a lake over your ancestors wasn't in the brochure. Norris Dam wasn't cheap. $32.3 million in the 1930s, about $724 million today. And it came with a body count, 3,000 families and 5,300 graves displaced. The government called it progress. The people underwater probably had other words. By 1935, only 1 in 10 American farms had electricity, and with 21% of Americans still working on farms, that wasn't a fringe issue. Step outside the city, and you weren't just leaving modern life behind. You were time traveling. By 1936, Norris Dam was up and running, and it was just the beginning. The same year, the Supreme Court ruled the TVA constitutional. With that green light, the agency started thinking bigger. 9 new dams were approved. Then 16 were built. Because, like everyone knows, once you start building dams, you can't stop. Now it was time for the lights to finally come on. Another New Deal project helped make that happen. The Rural Electrification Administration, the TVA's younger bro who showed up late but still got the credit. Its mission? Expand the Muscle Shoals model across the entire Tennessee Valley. Fontana Dam became the crown jewel. If Wilson and Norris were impressive, Fontana was a monster. The Godzilla of dams, but friendlier and less radioactive. At 480 feet, it's still the tallest dam east of the Mississippi. Its reservoir, Fontana Lake, covers more than 10,000 acres. But beneath that scenic water lies a secret. Like Norris before it, Fontana had its winners and its losers. Progress always comes with a casualty list. Several towns lie beneath Fontana Lake, all wiped out like a modern-day Great Flood, minus the guy with an ark. Still, the dam did its job. Japan noticed it. In the 1930s, typhoons battered the coasts. Farms were underwater, and northern Japan slid into famine. Different continent, same problem. Mother Nature was on a world tour. Japanese engineers came to America to study the TVA. By 1938, Japan was building 5 hydroelectric dams on the Kitakami River. The once disaster-prone region became a hub of Japan's wartime industry, although it didn't save the empire. Turns out you can't out-dam an atomic bomb. But the TVA's timing mattered for another reason. The Great Depression hadn't just broken America, it had hit the world. Germany, still nursing its World War I hangover, was among the hardest hit. And 2 months after FDR took office, a very different kind of leader flipped his own switch. Adolf Hitler was also big on infrastructure. He loved the Autobahn and the whole war thing. When his Blitzkrieg campaigns began, it became painfully obvious how far behind the United States was. America had optimism. Adolf had tanks. But there was a secret weapon. The TVA's cheap power transformed an impoverished backwater into a wartime machine. Electricity became the great multiplier. Factories appeared overnight, loud, hot, and probably violating several safety laws. Suddenly, the people of the Tennessee Valley were part of the arsenal of democracy. They forged steel for ships, shells, and guns. Aluminum for aircraft rolled off assembly lines by the truckload. Planes were built with Tennessee Valley aluminum. 60% of the elemental phosphorus in America's munitions came from here. Impressive and terrifying. You know you've made it when your local economy depends on things that go boom. And that wasn't even the most explosive project the TVA powered. Literally, there was so much power that Tennessee Valley became the perfect site for World War II's most secret project. When you're trying to build a weapon that might end civilization, you want reliable voltage. On September 19th, 1942, a little-known general made his first big call. Leslie Groves picked a quiet patch of land in Tennessee. It was remote, rural, and about as inconspicuous as you can get without hiding in a cornfield. It checked every box. Far from enemy bombers, close enough to Knoxville to poach workers. Only about 1,000 families lived there. That meant fewer awkward eviction conversations. Land was cheap too, $48 an acre, or roughly $9.40 today. A bargain price for we're building something we can't tell you about. Most importantly, power was everywhere. Norris Dam and the rest of the TVA grid stood ready to fuel whatever this thing turned into, and it was big. The government bought 59,000 acres near the Clinch River and started building a city from scratch. At first, it was called Site X, totally not mysterious. Then Clinton Engineering Works, eventually Oak Ridge. Sure, sounds like a retirement community, but it was where humanity learned how to split atoms. The Manhattan Project had begun, and the TVA had just gone from lighting homes to helping invent the apocalypse. First came the experimental X-10 plant. It dropped aluminum cans filled with uranium slugs that would undergo a chemical separation process. This wound up making the world's first plutonium outside of a laboratory setting. It was the foundation of the Fat Man bomb, the one Oppenheimer lost sleep over, and Christopher Nolan won awards for. The United States entered the nuclear age because of something the Tennessee Valley once lacked: power. In less than 15 years, a poverty-stricken rural region became the engine that helped win World War II and turned America into a superpower. So, never give up on your dreams, especially if they come with federal funding. Not bad for a program Congress nearly killed with paperwork. But the TVA wasn't done. Not content with flooding towns, it decided to take a swing at the atmosphere, too. In 1942, it built the Watts Bar steam plant. Still, the payoff came fast. There was so much new power that the TVA started its own little side hustle, the Electric Home and Farm Authority. Think of it as 1930s Amazon, but slower shipping and fewer billionaires. It helped farmers buy electric stoves, washing machines, and irrigation pumps. Hospitals got better. Schools did too. The TVA even became a teacher. Farmers were shown how to plant cover crops, rotate fields, and preserve topsoil. Government funded adult education, but with more manure. And thanks to flood control, the annual rains stopped being an annual crisis. Less biblical punishment, more manageable inconvenience. Cheap power saved labor and lured in new industries. The Tennessee Valley had a glow-up. It went from agrarian backwater to industrial hub in record time, all powered by hydroelectricity. Today, only about 1.2% of Americans work in agriculture. Electricity made it possible to do everything but farm, which might explain why my tomatoes taste like wet cardboard and cost $5 each. But unlike my farming, the TVA knew how to make things better. After the war, its influence helped Japan rebuild from the ashes. Today, the country has over 3,000 dams. That's the fourth most in the world. It's largely down to collaboration between American and Japanese planners during the occupation. One of them saw opportunity where everyone else saw smoking craters and existential dread. Japan's steep rivers and heavy rainfall made it perfect for hydropower. It's like the old saying, if life gives you fallout, build a dam. The TVA's success, and Japan's, triggered a global wave. By 1948, dam construction was booming. Next up was India. The Damodar River flooded constantly, so India looked at the TVA and said, "We'll have what they're having." The dominoes kept falling, one by one. Iran's Khuzestan region, Colombia's Cauca Valley, Mexico's Papaloapan Basin. By the mid-century, there were so many TVA knockoffs, you'd think they were bought from Temu. By 2023, more than 35,000 hydroelectric dams dotted the globe. They were on every continent, except Antarctica. Give it time. The TVA didn't invent the dam, but it proved they could reshape entire regions, for the better, with the occasional atomic bomb thrown in. The United Nations even made it a model for lifting people out of poverty. Today, roughly 80% of the world's rural population has electricity. In the early 1990s, it was 63%. A lot of progress, and a lot of concrete. And the best proof was closer to home. By 1953, per capita income in the Tennessee Valley had jumped from 44% to 61% of the national average. Not bad for a region that once treated electricity like a dangerous rumor. And that whole malaria problem? Gone. Electricity and drainage beat mosquito nets and prayer circles every time. Today, the TVA cranks out around 35 gigawatts of power. It's the sixth largest utility in the United States. It runs 30 dams and hydro stations, 4 coal plants, 16 natural gas plants, and 14 solar farms. There's even one lonely wind site, the introvert of renewables. Still pushing boundaries, it also operates 3 nuclear plants, supplying 40% of the region's power. And it's not done. More nuclear plants are coming. Not for the AI boom, though they'll definitely help the college students of tomorrow run a slightly smarter ChatGPT while writing their essays. Oak Ridge is about to make history again. The TVA just secured a permit for the nation's first small, modular nuclear reactors. They'll be around a third the size of a traditional reactor, and far more efficient. Built in factories, shipped by truck, bolted together on site. It's the IKEA version of an energy plant, just with way worse consequences if you lose a screw. It's all part of the TVA's plan to go carbon neutral by 2050. Thanks to the TVA, one of the poorest corners of the South became a full partner in the Industrial Revolution. Calling it a match made in heaven might be a stretch. Heaven isn't too keen on inventing atomic bombs, but it worked. In many ways, it was the most successful infrastructure project in US history, maybe even the world. The megaproject that powered a region, reshaped a nation, and accidentally helped invent the apocalypse. So, win-win for everyone. Thanks for joining me today. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you want to see more videos like this, then please consider subscribing and turn on notifications. It really does make a difference. Thanks again, and I'll see you next time on MatPack.